Hello everyone, once again this is Psalmist here. Today I just want to speak to you about how an ideal atheistic society will be immoral and nihilistic. Now what do I mean by that? Well, like I said an ideal atheistic society would be immoral and nihilistic. So I'm not saying an atheistic society, I'm saying an ideal. An ideal means that this society is completely atheistic. There's nothing that contradicts it. There is no Christianity, there is no any kind of religion. Now, what do I mean by that? Morality is rooted on the laws of God. Now, what do I mean by that? Morality is rooted on the law of God because the person who's a transgressor of the law of God is immoral. An adulterer is immoral because he or she has transgressed the law of God in terms of thou shalt not commit adultery. So that's why that person is immoral. A person who gives false testimony is immoral because he has transgressed the law of God, which is thou shalt not give false testimony. A thief is immoral because he or she has transgressed the law of God, which is thou shalt not steal. You see, so I could go on and on in terms of the Decalogue and in terms of all the laws that God has given. So, but you can understand where I'm coming from when I'm saying that an atheistic an atheistic society will be immoral. You see, because atheists who are speaking you know, a lot about this Christianity thing is just you know man's mind who conjure up all these things. It's easy to say it when you are in the United States or in the UK, because in the United States you still have the law of God, even though it's not the entire law of God. The West or all developed countries or all Western countries, even third world countries, still have some kind of observance of the law of God. Murder is a crime, and stealing is a crime. So other laws like do not commit adultery is not a crime, so you can get away with that. So because of that, there's still some kind of God's law in your country. That's why you are able to think that you could build an atheistic society and get away with it. But what you do not realize is that if you were to be given a country as an atheist and be given an opportunity to do exactly what you want, which is to do away with God, and you have to realize that when you do away with God, you're doing away with the laws of God. Now, where will your laws be based upon? Because if you're gonna say it will be easy when the atheistic society and ideal atheistic society is still new, because they're still coming out from maybe a Muslim country or a Christian country, and then they're still coming from there, so they still have some remnant of observations of the law of God. So it'd be easy for them to accept that thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal. So for the time being, they'll be able to accept. But as time passes, as children are being born to this atheist, things will really gonna come really atheistic now, because now the children themselves would have never heard of God, would have never heard of the Bible, would have never heard about the laws of God. So when they start to do things and they start to be told don't do that, they're gonna start asking questions about. I mean, Dad, like I saw this bicycle in a shop and I stole it because I liked it. I didn't have the money to buy it. And then the atheistic father is gonna say, no, you can't steal in somebody's shop. You have to buy. But he said, but Dad, I love this bicycle, and then I know that I can afford it, and I know that you also can afford it. So because no one saw me, I was able to take it, and we can just get away with this. But you don't like what he has done, and if you say, but it is wrong. You can't steal, and the child says, but why is it wrong to steal? That's where the problem comes. Because an atheist cannot tell a child why it is wrong to steal. Because if you're going to say that it is wrong, and the child innocently asks you, remember, he's not disrespecting you in any way. He's just asking you, but why is it wrong, Dad? The shopkeeper is not going to know that it's me. And they're not going to find out. So why is it wrong? But you feel that it's wrong. You say, but it's immoral. Aha, it's immoral. What is immoral is opposition to the law of God. So you're saying that your son has committed an immoral act because he has broken the law of God, which is he must not steal. And then the conversation keeps going. He's saying, but it's immoral. So what? And then you're grieved because you don't want your son to be a thief, but you have no means to threaten him, to make him see that to steal is wrong. And you say it's immoral, and then he says, but I mean, who came up with this thing that it's immoral to steal? And then now you're stuck because you can't say Richard Dawkins or Stephen Hawking or Charles Darwin. Why? Because they are just human beings also. So you don't know what to say. And then the son goes on to say, no, I mean, whoever came up with that was just wrong. Look, I wanted the bicycle and I knew that I could get it and I got it. The shopkeeper doesn't know that it's me and I'm getting on with it. And you are grieved as an atheist and say, but this son is turning into a thief. He's turning into an immoral person. He's going to grow up to be an immoral man. But morality is based on the law of God, and you don't believe in God. And because you don't believe in God, you don't believe in what the Bible teaches, that it is wrong, it is evil, it is immoral to steal. And now you're stuck with a son who's going to live out what you thought was good, but you're saying that is wrong. Because this son of yours, if he continues stealing, he can get shot and killed. And you will be grieved because he died. And you couldn't convince him that to steal is wrong, to steal is immoral, because you have no base. Because eventually, in everything that we say is wrong, eventually to make a person conform to what is right, and to, first of all, you're going to motivate him to do what is right. But if motivation does not work, that's a positive way of making a person do what's right. If positivity does not make a person do right, you're going to have to intimidate the person. And intimidation must be either jail, and if the person keeps stealing, even if they come back of prison, they keep stealing, there has to be something that must make a person afraid. Eventually, it has to come to the Godhead and say, the Godhead, God, He's going to destroy you in hell, and you define what hell looks like and what it's like. And that person now will grow a conscience, because it is only through the intimidation of the punishment or the threat of the punishment of God in which people have conscience. Without being afraid, you can't have conscience. Because conscience comes from the fear of punishment, from guilt, which comes from the fear of punishment, of knowing that I've done wrong. That's why a person is able to feel guilty even though there's no arrest. They can't explain why they feel guilty. It is still because there's still some kind of restraint from God in that person. But in an ideal atheistic society, you can't have such. You see, like in one example that I also like to give, in an atheistic society, the transition of coming from like a country like the US or a country like the UK is that at the beginning there will still be observance of the laws of God. So it will be like you will be allowed to marry a woman, you will be allowed to marry a man even when you're a man, you will be allowed to marry a woman even though you're a woman. That's transition from a civil society, from a secular society. That's transition. But as the years pass, someone else is gonna find joy in having sexual intercourse with an animal, and then because they first of course doing it behind closed doors and hiding it, but eventually they're gonna see that they can't be happy and hide what they're happy with, and then now they want to make this thing legal. They want to be allowed to marry their goat or their donkey or their dog or whatever, but they want to marry an animal and they want to have sexual intercourse and produce offspring. And some people think that will never happen. Well, don't think with a human being. With a fallen heart, anything is possible. And this person goes in a campaign and saying that human beings should be allowed to marry whatever they want. Because in the beginning, it's about feeling. It's about if a man has feelings for another man, he should be allowed to marry because he doesn't choose to have feelings for another man, and that's accepted and is passed into law. So a man is allowed to marry another man, a woman is allowed to marry another woman. But the problem becomes when a man starts to have feelings for a dog. He didn't choose to. It just happened. So he's still acting according to his own feelings. So in an atheistic society, when that happens, when a man wants to marry his dog, and then the atheists are saying, no, you can't do that. And he says, why? Why can I not marry my dog? And then you say, but it's wrong. But who decided? Because that's the question. The same thing that atheists like to say, if God created everything, who created God? And that's their trump card, of course. So it's still going to be a trump card for the atheist who wants to do what to other atheists, is wrong and immoral. And he's going to say, no, who decided this thing? I'm going to challenge this law. It's unconstitutional. I should be allowed to do what I want. In the kingdom of God, you're not allowed to do what you want. In a godly society, you're not allowed to do what you want. But in an atheistic society, there is no law because every law is based on the law of God. It might not be directly based on that, but they are all rooted in the law of God. So he's saying that who decided this thing? You can't all in the same way you can't say it's Charles Darwin or Richard Dawkins or Stephen Hawking. You have to elaborate and reason. And because you are a human being, it's also a human being saying, no, I have the right to marry whatever I want. And when you say it's immoral, you're still, once again, going back to the law of God. Because what is immoral is that which transgress the law of God. But you don't believe in God. So you kick God out of your mind. Now you need God because the only way you can have reasonable reason to say that it is wrong to marry a dog is if you say God has said it's an abomination. But the problem is that it's an atheistic society, so there is no such a thing as an abomination. You see, so the atheistic society becomes immoral. So now, because everything is immoral, everyone does what they want, there's no law. Now there's no more reason to do anything for whatever reason. You just do whatever you want. So it becomes nihilistic. Nothing is right, nothing is wrong. Because everything that is right must be based on a root, on a fountain. And that fountain for the world, whether or not they believe in God in terms of religion, in terms of Christ, in terms of Allah or whatever, there's a base, the memoranda which says that this is wrong, this is right. But without religion, you can't have that. So as I was saying that an ideal atheistic society will be immoral and nihilistic. Remember, to be nihilistic is to deny any kind of teaching from religion, from morals. You see, so anything which is moral, which is religious, which says that life has a meaning, life has a beginning and end, life is a means to something, and nihilist denies this. But religion is based on God. You see, morality is based on the laws of God. So because the atheist denies that there is a God, he denies religion. And because he denies religion, that means his life has no meaning. And they do tell you, atheists and the evolutionists, in terms of saying that everything just because of an explosion, everything is a mistake. Because if there is a creator, that means he had a purpose to create. He has a reason to create. He's trying to achieve something. But if no one created everything, this thing just came out of an explosion, which was a mistake, as in like a car and a car coming together and head on, and then they explode. It was a mistake because they didn't intend that to happen, unless one of them wanted to kill the other. So it's like now And an ideal atheistic society becomes nihilistic. And in a nihilistic society, because there's no meaning, there's no goal to anything. It means the atheists themselves, it means that your Richard Dawkins and your Charles Darwin and your Stephen Hawking don't even have any reason to do what they're doing. Because what is the purpose of what they're doing? Because the purpose of me doing what I'm doing is so that I could teach, so that I could create understanding in the minds of men about God, about religion, about Christ, and about also atheism. The purpose of that is that those who understand that atheism is not rational, atheism cannot be applied in real life. It's something that you do for the movies, for the cartoons, and teach the children. And if you teach that to the children, you're going to destroy them because they're going to start believing in it. Anyway, so it's still wrong in any place. That's the purpose of that. And because I believe that in what I'm teaching, you're going to believe in God. And then when you believe in God, you're going to obey the commands of God. The commands of God command men so that men should not hurt one another. Because all sin that really does is, hurt people. You're racist, you hurt people. You're hateful. And the Bible says, don't hate. Love your enemies. Do to other people what you like them to do unto you. So these are the commands of God. These are the commands of the Bible. So when I'm teaching you this, I'm helping you so that you could see the goodness of God. That God commands you to love other people. God commands husbands to love their wives. And God commands wives to respect and submit to their husband. Is it not what most husbands want? Is it not what most wives want for their husband to love them and protect them and cherish them and to make them happy? Is it not what they want? If then you agree that that's what they want, then that means that God is good. That means that the laws of God are good. But in atheism, there's no reason for anything whatsoever. When Richard Dawkins wrote The God Delusion, there's no reason for him to do it, because what is he trying to teach? What is he trying to achieve? Because the only thing that he's going to end up achieving is destroying, the destruction and the elimination of God, the elimination of the laws of God in the minds of men. And men are going to start doing what they want. And what men really want is to oppress, to come up with apartheid, to come up with slavery, to hurt one another, for accumulation of gold and silver and land and power. And that's what most men want. And because there will be no law against it, even in terms of the eternal law of God, in which if you were to do all these things by hurting men, stealing resources from other countries, and eventually, and if you have enough power that you cannot be charged, you cannot be prosecuted by the laws of man, that means you are going to war with it. That's what Richard Dawkins is preaching in terms of saying that there is no God. Because if a man understands that there is a God, but he understands that he can get away with what he's doing, because maybe he can get away from the eyes of men, from the minds of men. But he knows that he can't get away with it from God. So somehow he gets a conscience that no, I cannot do this. This is going to lead to my own destruction. But if there's no God, who's going to punish you? This is not to say that I'm using that to intimidate people, you see. But I'm trying to show you that when you apply atheism and Christianity and religion, you have order and peace. But when you apply atheism, you have lawlessness and chaos and immorality and nihilism. Because nothing has meaning. Why do you get married? Why can't you just sleep with the woman and have children? Because what's the meaning of marriage? Because the meaning of marriage is supposed to make the man exclusively to belong to one woman. You see, the meaning of marriage is supposed to make a woman exclusively belong to one man. And some people are going to say, but the Bible has allowed men to marry many women. Listen to what Jesus says. Jesus says that the two shall become one flesh. He doesn't say the three or the four or the five. So they are no longer two, but they are one. So when they are one means that you belong to that person whom you're one with. Because the minute that there's another person, then it changes the whole thing. That means you can have like 3 halves of a loaf. You can have 1 loaf and a half. You can't have 1 loaf. So a half and a half make 1. But when you have 3 halves in terms of the man and the woman and another woman, then you have 3 halves. You don't have 1. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. So that's the reason for marriage. Because you don't need to get married to have sex. You can have sex without marriage. You don't need to get married to have children. You can have children without marriage. So that's what the atheist point of view, the atheistic worldview will do, is that you no longer need to get married. And that actually means that a lot of people are more like atheists than Christian, because a lot of people are having children out of wedlock, a lot of children are having sex out of marriage. So even though they don't, you know, they don't say that they're atheistic, but they have the same character as atheism. So in atheism, you don't need to have a family, because in atheism is nihilistic. There's no reason, there's no meaning for family. And so when you're an atheist and you treat your employees bad, you treat them like slaves, you use them to get your own means, which is said to be rich, you're still correct, right? Because there's no law against that. You just want to be a billionaire and be on Forbes magazine and all these magazines, which shows the riches of man. And when someone Google you, they show you a net worth, and you're worth $2 billion. But the people that who are working for you, they struggle. They can't even make ends meet. They can't even make a living. They live in shacks. But because there's no law against what you're doing, then you get away with it. But God says that the employers, the masters, must treat their slaves, which are the employees, in a way that they want to be treated, because they also have their master who is in heaven, who will deal with them and treat their employees very badly. So not only is the atheistic society an ideal atheistic society destructive and lawless and chaotic, it is immoral and nihilistic. Because all the meaning of life, we get it from God. All the meaning that we get from life comes from God. All the good things that we enjoy come from God. The atheists who are in the US, in South Africa, in Russia, in the UK, may not see that for now, because there's still some kind of submission to the few laws of God. So they would think that, well, we can do that. We don't need the Bible to tell us. We don't need to be taught to do what is right. But the problem is that to do what is right, you need a standard. Because the atheists themselves, in their schools, what they do is that they make scientific discovery. They make that the standard. So when they go to the schools, they teach the children. They say, this is the standard. So the children must conform to this standard. Meaning that someone must bring up a standard in which life must be must be lived in accordance with that standard. So the atheists understand this, that you need a standard to say that x multiplied by x is x squared. So that when you teach the child that x by x is x squared, you have a memorandum to say you're wrong or you're right. And the child, when they see them, oh, I'm right, then they're happy about it. So now what would be the standard of a family for an atheist if he doesn't know God and there's no command from God? An atheist won't even see the reason to have a family, because animals don't have a family. They just, mate, and then offspring comes out, and then they move on. But human beings have a family. And even the transfer of culture and custom and religion, it is through the family. The reason why, the English are English is through the family, because that's how you teach the English tradition, through the family. The reason why the Hindus are Hindus is through the family. That's how you teach the Hindu tradition, the Hindu culture, through the family. The reason why Zulus are Zulus, it is through the family, because the Zulu culture is taught through the family. But without a family, you can't teach that. You just have kids, and the kids will just be raised. So that's what will happen in an atheistic family, in an atheistic ideal society. There will be no culture. And culture is what teach people morals and values. There will be no culture, there will be no customs. What they're going to have is pop culture. So because there's no culture, there's no values, that means there is no law. And that's there's chaos and disorder. And there cannot be peace in chaos and disorder. That is an atheistic ideal society. And I don't think that there's any atheist who is, first of all, objective, logical, and who uses critical thinking to say that we can build an atheistic society without God, and without God meaning that all the laws of God will be removed. Laws for marriage, laws for family, laws for how people should treat one another, laws for how men should treat women, laws for how women should relate to women, to men, laws of how men should raise their kids. If you remove all that and bring evolution, who says that we were once monkeys, meaning that everything that we should do should be from the monkeys. And they believe that they could have a peaceful, orderly, organized, cultured society. No atheist can reason and say you can have that without the laws of God. But of course, for the sake of argument, they're gonna use intellectual reasoning that yes, because that's all they have is just the brain. Without the brain, they have nothing. So they worship their brain because everything that they can comprehend is through the brain. You see, but you can see that without teaching, without command, you cannot really be able to do anything because a child learns through teaching. Teaching not necessarily to say to tell the child to do that. They learn by watching and observing and doing likewise. That's why a child who's raised by animals look at the animals and do likewise. But you can't just evolve and suddenly think that we need to get married. We need to get it. That cannot be evolution. You can't just evolve and start, identifying yourself as a family in the way that you live your life, which will give birth to culture and custom. That's not evolution. Because then you will have only one form of culture. And how can all the nations make marriage the way that it is, in which it is the man who marries the woman, and the offspring belongs to the man, not the woman? How can all nations do the same thing? That cannot be evolution. That can only come from teaching and transfer of knowledge from generation to generation. And the reason why the cultures are going to be different is because you have 5 sons and they're separate. And then the other son starts teaching his own children in the way that he wants. And the other son starts teaching children. So even though they come from the same man, they start to be sort of different. Because the Hindus are going to teach their own things. And the Muslims are going to, the Ethiopians are going to teach their own things. The Chinese are going to teach their own. That's why the cultures are different. But if it was evolution and men are evolving more or less at the same rate, there should be just same culture, really. You see? But all this is transferred through teaching. And teaching completely rebukes and disqualifies evolution. Because if it's through teaching, you're going to ask, how did the first person know about marriage? How did they know about how to treat a woman? How did they know that you should start a family? Someone must have taught them. But who taught them? Is it evolution? Because that's not what the animals do. They don't start families. They don't get married. They don't dedicate themselves to one woman or 2 women if they've married 2 women. They sleep with any animal which is in heat. You see? So you can't just look at a woman and want to sleep with her in terms of ideal human values. You can't do that. You have to marry your wife and she'll be the one whom you sleep with. So that is how destructive an ideal atheistic society would be. It will be immoral, first of all, and it will be nihilistic. And a nihilist society is a destructive, lawless, chaotic society. So that is all that I have to say about this topic, how an ideal atheistic society would be immoral and nihilistic. And I can add and say even self-destructive. So and then if you enjoy this content, you can also give this video a like. And then if you like content like this, you can subscribe to my channel so you can receive content like this. Thank you for listening.